Radio's political editor, Peter Cardwell. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Vanessa.
And James Harvey from Just Stop Oil. Hello, James. Nice
Good
to
afternoon.
see you both. All right, so I think, you know, James, you are the representative of Just Stop Oil here.
Yeah.
You've heard the whole introduction, quite a lengthy one, all sorts going on.
Yeah.
Shall we start with accusations of the use of anti-Semitic tropes? I mean, the headline here, Jewish groups outraged by Just Stop Oil's Holocaust claim. And this is the claim that oil executives are effectively Nazis and that what they're doing is gassing us all in a giant gas oven. I mean, obviously, shades of Auschwitz, the Holocaust, the massacre of 6 million Jewish people.
Absolutely.
And Jewish organisations horrified at the comparison. Do you defend that comparison?
Well, I think what's happening is we've got thousands of people that are being affected by the climate crisis and dying right now. And what we're saying is the policies of this government that we regard as criminals are bringing about those deaths on a massive scale around the world. We've had 3,000 excess deaths in the UK alone last year, and that's only going to get worse and worse. And those policies are causing those deaths by continuing to explore new oil and gas.
And where does a comparison with Nazism come in here?
Well, at the time in Germany in the 1930s and 40s, we know that the government there, they facilitated the deaths of thousands and thousands of people.
That wasn't facilitating the
Or
deaths,
they
was
caused
it?
the deaths of
Well,
thousands
that was conscious and purposeful genocide. That was to eradicate an entire race and religion of people, plus those that they considered to be mentally subnormal, plus those that were gay, plus those that came from Romani communities, the Roma. I mean, it wasn't a kind of incidental factor of a general government. It was a purposeful genocide. So can you see that comparing the two things is deeply hurtful?
It's very strong language, and it's shocking language that we've used in that statement.
Yes.
Yes, I totally get that. But what we're seeing now is unprecedented. We're seeing the deaths of thousands of people around the world due to climate change, and we're going to see billions of people impacted in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
But that doesn't make the comparison any more accurate or any less offensive, does it?
But perhaps it'll break through this bubble that we've got at the moment where people aren't really realising what's happening. We've got the greenwashing going on a massive scale. The government are not telling the truth. I mean, look at that letter from Grant Shapps.
Yeah, what do you make of that letter from Grant Shapps?
Oh, I mean, what are we calling him these? Are we calling him Michael Green or Grant Shapps these days? I don't know.
What difference does it make what you call him?
Well, I'm just
What's
saying
the implication of that?
He's a little bit crooked in some of his past dealings, but
I don't know if that's true either. Is that fair to say? I mean, he used one
Well,
name.
he used a false personality online in 2015 with his business, I think. But moving on from that.
Well, let's not talk about that. If you don't want to talk about that, you brought it up.
I did
Peter's
bring it up.
sitting next to us. He's our political editor. Grant Shapps did use a different name for business, didn't he? But was there anything shady or dodgy about it?
Well, I'm sure he would deny that there was anything crooked about what he did. But the point is, I suppose, in terms of this letter to Keir Starmer, Grant Shapps is saying that between £3,000 and £4,000 of damage was done to the Department of Climate Security, the Net Zero Department, by James's organisation, Just Stop Oil. And he is alleging that Labour is the political wing of Just Stop Oil, something that Sir Keir Starmer says is nonsense. And because Dale Vince, who has given money both to the Labour Party and indeed to Just Stop Oil, is a donor to both causes, he's essentially saying that they are linked in that way, and there have been meetings and contacts, certainly, between the Labour Party and Just Stop Oil. So it's a very, very interesting point, and comes at a time, obviously, with this allegation of anti-Semitic tropes as well, something that I'm filling in for Ian Collins at the moment between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and what's happening. I spoke to Karen Pollock of the Holocaust Education Trust, and this is what she had to say about those comments.
When people make inappropriate comparisons with the Holocaust, the problem with that is it's creating false equivalences, and it's enabling people to somehow draw the wrong parallels and the wrong conclusions. I just think the word perpetrator and Nazi perpetrator has a certain meaning. It evokes a certain time in history, and we need to exercise care and caution.
So a very clear message from Karen Pollock there about care and caution in the use of language in regard to this, and the fact that, in her view, certainly when you're making those comparisons, you shouldn't be talking about the Holocaust unless you're actually talking about the Holocaust. I mean, James, maybe I could ask you, do you know what genocide means? Do you know what the word means?
Well, it's the deaths of thousands of people of a specific nation or culture.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's to eradicate an actual race or
Yeah.
an actual religion or a whole country full of people. And so do you really think that Rishi Sunak wants to kill us? Is he setting out to kill us? Do you think the Tory party is, or the Labour Party, or anybody in power anywhere, deliberately trying to kill their own families and everybody else on the planet?
Well, I think they need to ask themselves that question, because their advisors, their own climate change committee, are telling them what's going to happen if we continue to invest in new oil and gas. They're telling them that we can't afford it. They're telling them exactly what's going to happen to global temperatures. It will result in the deaths of thousands of people. I mean, whole island nations are at risk of disappearing between the waves, like island nations like Vanuatu. I mean, that's a whole nation. Is that not genocide if that gets wiped out? One person every 36 seconds is dying in Africa because of East Africa because of climate-induced famine and drought. Is that not genocide? Whole nations getting wiped out by
But don't you realise that you are losing people by comparing it to, you know, it's so offensive to use language in regard to Nazis and the Holocaust. I mean, you may have some point in what you're saying. I'm not saying you do or you don't, although personally I think Just Stop Oil is a very dangerous organisation. But the point I'm saying is that you're just losing people in this. They're not listening to you anymore because they're fed up of what you're doing.
It's interesting because we get more and more people donating to Just Stop Oil all the time, and more people joining us on the streets. I was out on the streets yesterday and today. We had 50 arrests yesterday for peaceful protest. And today, out on the streets, we had so much support from the sidelines as well. Obviously, there's people that are angry at being disrupted. We get that. But we know that the disruption coming down the line is going to be far worse.
So upsetting Holocaust survivors is worth it, is it?
No one wants anyone to get upset.
Well, they are. They are upset. If you use this language, you're going to deeply offend and upset people who have been through, or their families historically have been through the worst possible thing. Can you not just see that? Can you not just check yourself and not use that language?
Yeah, look, the language, we need to think carefully about whatever we're using in the public domain. But
so you admit you shouldn't have used it?
I believe the specific language used in the press release was we were comparing the policies of Adolf Eichmann, who said he facilitated the transport of Jews. He wasn't responsible for their deaths.
And then he doubled down in another press release you sent out later on and used more Nazi Holocaust comparisons. You can't explain this away.
But what would you call the deaths of thousands of people around the world, hundreds of thousands of people coming?
I wouldn't compare it to the Nazis because I think that is deeply offensive to many people.
And also desperately inaccurate. I mean, if it were a really accurate comparison, and by doing it, you really set up so clearly and you really kind of shed light on what's going on, then okay, then maybe people might understand, because they think, well, this is an incredibly difficult thing to say and a hideous thing to contemplate. But actually, Just Stop Oil have really, you know, hit the nail on the head with this. This is the perfect metaphor, but it's not, because it's so woefully inaccurate. It's very distressing, but it's also totally confusing, and it's utterly ineffective as a comparison. It's just no good at all. It's inaccurate, doesn't do any good whatsoever. Plus, it does lead, doesn't it, to comparisons with, you know, former associations of the Labour Party and anti-Semitism. You know, part of the Labour Party says grant jabs. Next minute, you know, there's anti-Semitic tropes emanating from Just Stop Oil. And it seems such a shame because, well, many things, but because Just Stop Oil was very clearly associated, especially at the beginning, with a certain kind of courtesy. That members were very courteous, that, you know, when the police arrested you, you were polite, you went willingly, you didn't cause any kind of, you know, horrible sort of confrontations, people were polite. And this isn't polite, this is sledgehammer, isn't it?
The point we're trying to make, and we don't want to cause any offence, and it's horrible if we have offended people like that.
Will you apologise?
The point we wanted to make was...
Will you apologise to the people you've offended?
On a personal level? I'm sorry if we've caused any offence to anyone due to that. But what we're saying is government policies are causing the deaths of thousands of people. And that's the sort of comparison we wanted to make. And actually, we're going to be starting to work with lawyers on this to bring climate criminals to justice, whether they work in government, whether they work in the fossil fuel industries. We've got talks with lawyers at the moment to prosecute these people that are causing the deaths of...
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing to do with this comparison, but while we've been talking, people who are listening on the radio won't have seen this. Those watching TV will have seen it. We were showing the footage of the orange paint being sprayed all over these government buildings. We know that you've incurred now a cost of thousands of pounds to get rid of. Yeah, we can see it again now. It's just enormous amounts of graffiti. Huge swathes of orange paint in enormous
estimated between £4,000 and £5,000.
Yeah, estimated between £4,000 and £5,000 to clear it off. Definitely it can't be left like that. They look like an absolute desecration of official buildings, not a small thing that you could just leave and ignore. So £4,000 or £5,000. Loads of people watching and listening to this programme really struggling financially. You know, we've got this cost of living crisis
living
that's
crisis,
bitten
yeah.
viciously at ordinary people's lives in a really unprecedented way, especially for younger people who've never lived through anything like this before and are really ricocheting from the shock of it all. And then suddenly, because of that, everyone's got to fork out 5,000 quid.
Well, maybe the government could use some of the £236 million they subsidise the fossil fuel industry with each week to pay for that. But the point is, protest is disruptive. To get our point across, we need to take action. Civil resistance is what we're engaging in. And I would really urge everyone to get involved. It's our futures that are on the line. People are dying now, so look us up on juststopoil.org and get involved.